I'm really excited today to bring to Learning Now TV World Vision UK. You may have been following their stories. They have lots of brilliant stories from learning and development. And today we're going to hear from Michelle Coates and from Leanne Long and from the cat, all about EDI and what World Vision UK have been doing to really create inclusive learning and development. Leanne, let me come to you first. Talk me through World Vision UK's approach to EDI and learning and development.
I think in common with many organizations, when there was the terrible murder of George Floyd, there was a real heightened sense of wanting to do something very dramatic and very urgent and very elaborate, perhaps, in our learning and development for our staff around EDI and related concerns. But as we've reflected on that, we've realized that really, if you really want people to change and transform, and take on new ideas, it can't be a one-size-fits-all sheep dip approach, that a program can't just be thrown at people, that you really need to take them on a journey. And that journey will be individual. It needs to come at it from a number of different angles because people bring their stories to something like equality or diversity. And so we have rather developed a much more multifaceted program, a much more multi-pronged approach to learning and development around issues like racism, diversity, white privilege, and other quite sensitive topics. And we believe that that has a much greater sense of real success, and real success means real transformation, not just a tick box compliance activity.
It sounds to me, Leanne, like you've really approached this in true spirit of the words that EDI stand for, and the inclusivity and that kind of thing. You're talking there about the individual stories. How did you at World Vision UK enable people to share their stories? What did it actually look like?
We undertook, or rather our senior leadership undertook, a listening exercise where they met with staff from diverse backgrounds and just allowed them to talk about how it felt, sometimes to feel different or to feel marginalized or to not belong. And there was a real, I think, a moment where people were safe to speak. And some of it was not easy listening. Some of it, we are a lovely organization with great relationships. And to hear that colleagues had felt left out was not easy. And then we took the findings, the understandings, and then tried to say, well, what do we need to do to make that no longer the case? So the listening doesn't end. You can't just do a one-off activity. But whenever we offer something in terms of our EDI, we then listen to people about how was that, did that work? And, you know, accepting that not everything will work. It's a journey for us as well.
I'm really loving the approach that you're taking here. So it's on a very personal level. You're creating a safe space for people to speak freely. And then the learning that's coming out of that, you know, how is that then changing programs that you may be offering or any learning and development approaches that you might be taking?
I think we've all seen the research that says that traditional unconscious bias courses have limited efficacy, that people often resent them, that it actually entrenches perhaps more excluding attitudes sometimes because people feel it's being done to them. And so really understanding a wide range of people's views meant that we realized we had to have a number of different elements to our program. And we've been very careful to make sure it does cover the whole range of diversity. It's quite easy just to get sort of hung up on the anti-racism, but we've kept our program deliberately broad and recognized that different people in the organization need different levels of input. That if you are a manager, for instance, there will be a much deeper understanding needed. If you're a leader, you need that understanding, but you also need some other different strategies around how to inspire a more inclusive workplace. So the program we've developed has a number of strands, a number of degrees of depth. It's not just a sheep dip. And there's also mandatory and opt-in, because not everybody is going to want to go on the full marathon length journey. Some people are going to want to just do the minimum, and forcing them to do more than that is counterproductive. So we've really tried to say, what are the roles people fill, what's their position in the organization, and what is their personal preference in terms of this learning journey we want them to go on.
It sounds excellent and exactly what's needed across many of the viewers here at Learning Now TV. Can I come to you, Michelle, to just talk us through in a bit more of a practical way? What does it look like? You know, you're Learning and Development Manager, like many of our viewers would be Learning and Development Managers. I see your cat's done one now and disappeared in a very cat way.
Just sat on my arm, so I can't press anything, but yeah.
The challenge of working from home, like many of us are doing at the moment, you know, with our pets, with our children and all of those things around it. How do you engage individuals with really taking on board this sensitive subject of equality, diversity and inclusion? It seems from what Leanne has said, you've been very inclusive in doing that. Can you talk us through a little bit of what it's looked like?
Yeah, I think the key word is really being intentional about what we're offering and what options there are. We don't just want it to be legal, compliance related activities. We also want informal spaces for people to learn in an environment that feels safe to talk about. So one way we've done that is through our book circles. So we have kind of book groups throughout the year. We make sure that we include lots of different authors, and one particular one that we're looking at is Sway, which is about diversity, and it's going to help have that conversation. So people are signing up as we speak, and that's going to just help some of those conversations as well throughout the organisation. Other things are, again, just thinking about the speakers that we use for any internal events as well, just making sure there's much more diverse speakers. And sometimes it's having more positive stories as well, so that it doesn't, you know, feel like it's all about things that we need to improve all the time. Sometimes it's about lifting people up, and so we've had some conversations from coaches and speakers to empower people to feel that they can take that next step, and things like that. So it's also about empowerment rather than just focusing on the problems that we have as an organisation through that as well. And then smaller practical things, it's just if I'm using PowerPoint presentations on Teams or Zoom, just making sure I've got transcripts on so that you can see the words at the bottom so people can read rather than just watch all the time. So there's just different ways that people can interact with different learning events for different learning styles. And neurodiversity as well is something that we've been looking at improving access to learning opportunities as well, and giving people the option to first find out if they have a neurodiversity, because often it's underreported. So how do we make safe spaces for people to disclose that, so that we can make reasonable adjustments and support them in the learning and their workplace. So there's some of the things that we've been looking to improve recently.
You really are trying to cast that net as wide as possible and create that safe space for everybody in your organisation, it seems, which is a really beautiful thing to hear. Some of the tips that you're sharing there, seeing that you're working both in a formal space and an informal space, does one have more impact than another? I mean, I know you said earlier, Leanne, a little bit about the informal. Do you find that actually, your listening exercise, that was a formal exercise, but it's ongoing. And Michelle, you talked there about sort of neurodiversity. Does the formal have more of an impact or less? Shall I come to you?
I don't mind jumping in.
Okay.
I think you need both, actually. I think, and that's not just a cop-out answer. I think that where you have formal activities, where you have recognized leaders stepping out, participating and saying things, that allows the more informal, the more interpersonal to have validity and power. For example, we have a thing called brown bag lunches, which are 45-minute drop-in seminars on a range of topics, not just EDI. But when we had an EDI brown bag lunch, we had a panel, and our CEO and one of the directors were on the panel alongside ordinary staff members talking about their experiences. And that's incredibly powerful. And that legitimizes and catalyzes the individual conversations that then you have at a book circle, or you have in a tea meeting, or you have over coffee. I really think you need both and. If it's just formal courses, people don't allow it to transform themselves. If it's just me and my mate having a chat, it doesn't feel like it's really going to change anything at a structural, systemic level.
I think that's a really strong answer, actually, that balance between the two things. What I'm also hearing there is something around stakeholders, and I don't mean hierarchically, I mean everybody who's involved. The example you've given there of the brown bag lunch with the panel made up of the people who are needing to tell their stories is really powerful. I know it's something at World Vision UK that you do really well, tell your stories, and I really appreciate you coming and sharing your story with us today. So to our Learning Now TV audience, what are you doing about EDI and the agendas that need to be addressed in this current world that we live in? I think that there's lots of ideas shared from our guests today. So thank you, Leanne. Thank you, Michelle. And I'm sad we didn't get to see your cat when we were doing the little preamble. There we go. Thank you very much. Is that Hugo? Did I hear his name earlier?
Huey.
Well, thank you to all three of you for joining us and inspiring other people to think more carefully about what they're doing when it comes to formal and informal EDI learning and development. Thank you.